What's up guys, welcome back to my channel Anime Fiction. I'm back with a new episode of Naruto was Spider-Man with the power of Speed Force part 2, and if you did enjoy the video, consider a like, and if you're new to my channel and like my content, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more crossover fictions. Now let's begin this new video.
Chapter 6. As Naruto, clad in his Phantom Spider costume, found himself alone in the dark, wet streets of New York, a small girl could be heard silently sobbing. He had no idea how he got there, as everything proceeding up to that point had vanished from his memory. Naruto went slowly through the heavy rain toward the sound of the crying child, unable to control his movements or his body. When the Phantom Spider approached the corner, he came to a complete halt when he saw the child, a small girl with long black hair, sobbing over the body of a big man. Naruto advanced a few steps, recognizing the man as Wilson Fisk, the man he murdered in order to exact revenge on his mother. The boy continued to approach Fisk's headless body and the little girl before coming to a halt just a few feet away. "Daddy." The child moaned as she tried in vain to resuscitate the Kingpin's body. The Phantom Spider stood motionless in the same location, not moving a muscle. The child slowly turned around, her face turned to the Phantom Spider. He immediately recognized her. He recognized the child from the photograph in Fisk's office. "Why?" The grieving youngster questioned the lad bitterly, still attempting to bring her behemoth of a father back to life with what little effort her small body could generate. "Why did you hurt my daddy?" Naruto said nothing as he watched the small child continue to press down on her father's chest. "Why?" the youngster shouted, breaking Naruto's stupor. "Why? He murdered my mother. Because of him, I have no one left," Naruto murmured, his gaze drawn to the ground to avoid the child's gaze. "And now I have no one left because of you." Naruto was quickly transported somewhere else once the girl spoke. Naruto's eyes widened as he realized what he had just witnessed was yet another nightmare. He'd had nightmares about the night he killed Fisk ever since, wondering if he'd done the right thing. When he wasn't dreaming about Fisk, he was dreaming about his mother. If it wasn't either of them, he fantasized about Harry and Cindy. He often wondered what would happen if he got closer to them. He wondered if he'd also lose them. Those thoughts drove him to shove them both away, despite their attempts to approach him. A few months had passed after the Fisk incident, and Naruto had celebrated his 18th birthday alone. Cindy and Harry both attempted to reach him, but he had rarely responded to either of them until he didn't react at all. He hadn't been to class for months, and because his scores were so good, he didn't have to show up for finals. During his time away from school, he streamed his exploits as the Phantom Spider before being banned from the platform. He didn't undertake his criminal hunting on broadcast, but once they established a link between himself and the vigilante hitting criminals at night, they kicked him off the platform. When he wasn't streaming, he'd go out late at night and ask any of Fisk's remaining men about Project V or Herman Schultz. Many people had heard about Schultz, but no one knew where he had gone when Fisk died. Many people didn't know who the man in the suit was or what Project V was. He had ran out of ideas. Despite the lack of leads, the young man did not quit up. Every day, he'd comb through the evidence left behind by his mother, and at night, he'd go on his manhunt. Naruto eventually ran out of money for rent, and he needed to return to school because winter break had finished. His preoccupation, as well as his destructive forms of sorrow, had to end. His mother desired that he be educated, and his father that he establish Parker Industries in his place, so he chose to follow both of their wishes and return to school. Naruto lay in his now empty flat, staring at the ceiling, unable to get out of bed. He was fatigued from only a few hours of sleep the night before. The nightmares didn't help matters. He eventually got out of bed and prepared for the first day of his senior semester in high school. The boy rode the bus to school as usual, but something seemed off. People on the bus seemed surprised to see him, which perplexed him. Why are they behaving as if they've seen a ghost? Naruto thought to himself as he glanced out the window, avoiding his peers' glares. The young man soon found himself at the front of the school entrance, staring blankly at his own little prison or hell. As he approached the door, he noticed Cindy Moon, who was cradling her books to her chest in embarrassment as Flash tried to flirt with her with his arm against the wall above her. Naruto became enraged for a brief while before Cindy established eye contact with him. Cindy's eyes brightened as if she had seen her husband return from battle before slipping beneath Flash's arm and sprinting for Naruto. Naruto was pleased to see her, despite his cold and heartless looks. He felt something other than uncontrollable wrath within himself for the first time in months. Cindy threw her books to the ground and hugged her pal, burying her face in his chest as other students passed by. He immediately regretted keeping her in the dark for so long. For the past month, he'd been ignoring her calls and texts, as he had everybody who tried to reach him. He only dealt with one person, the landlord, who handed him the rent without saying anything. "I thought you had something happen to you. You stopped returning my phone calls and texts. I was informed of what occurred. I expected you to." Naruto's mother's murder was known to the entire school. Flash even propagated the story that Naruto committed suicide over it, and many people believed it because the only two people who knew his phone number, Harry Osborn and Cindy Moon, both stated they couldn't reach him. Cindy didn't want to believe the rumor, but Naruto's silence didn't help matters. Naruto returned her hug, looking around uneasily at the other kids' stares. "I apologize. I couldn't bear leaving the house any longer. I didn't mean to ignore you, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything." "No need to apologize. It's fine. Everyone grieves in their own way." Naruto was put at ease by Cindy's garbled voice. He was afraid she'd be furious with him because he had effectively pushed her away for so long, but she understood. She always seemed to. Naruto replied quietly, "Yeah." Naruto could see Flash looking at him with hatred in the distance, however Naruto's reciprocated hatred had vanished. His rage was reserved for more pressing things. Cindy and Naruto entered the school together, while Flash looked on in jealousy. Flash taunted Naruto one last time because he had nothing better to do. "Hello, Parker. How has it been treating you to be an orphan?" He stated this loudly, forcing everyone in the corridor to turn around and halt what they were doing. It was completely silent. Naruto came to a halt as everyone in the school watched to see what he'd do next. Naruto walked over to Flash and looked him in the eyes before speaking to him without any evidence of genuine anger in his voice. He spoke clearly. "I've had it with you, Flash. I'm not sure what your thing is or why you actually despise me, but it has to stop. Today." Naruto was aware of the reason, but he opted to keep his true feelings hidden. He was allowing Flash to avoid embarrassment. Flash was perplexed, gazing around the corridor as if to ask, "Y'all seeing this?" He mockingly laughed before speaking to Naruto. "Yeah. What would make me stop? Because you said so, right? Huh?" Naruto gave a nod. "That is correct. Flash, you're a wuss. That makes sense now. You're frail. You are fortunate. You don't have any true buddies. Girls dislike you. You're a moron. You're a backup quarterback, and that's only scraping the surface. Flash, you're envious of me. You've always been that way, so you make up for it by beating me. You know I can't hit you back, and you probably don't want me to. But I'll never give you that." The entire school was deafeningly quiet. Flash's face was flushed with rage after hearing such words from his punching bag's mouth. Flash smiled before launching into the response he hoped would put a stop to it all. "Why would I be jealous of an orphan, huh, Parker?" Naruto glanced up at his bully with the most blank expression he could muster. His blue eyes were dead, and he gazed directly into Flash's soul. Naruto gave his response coldly. "Because my parents genuinely cared about me, unlike yours, who couldn't give a fuck about you. That is the reason. You're a shame to the Thompson name, and you're well aware of it. Isn't that correct, Eugene?" The students in the audience all stared with wide eyes. Many of them had no idea that his name was Eugene, and those who did knew not to speak it to him unless they wanted a punch in the face. "Isn't that why you go by Flash? Eugene was a letdown, so you thought changing your name would make things better." Naruto took a breather before uttering the next two words with hate. It didn't. The corridor fell silent once more. Flash was stunned. He'd been read aloud like a first-grade book. Naruto had always known why Flash despised him. Whenever something positive happened to Naruto when Flash was present, Flash would try to bring him down. This was especially clear just a few seconds before, when Naruto had finally felt some happiness in months, only for Flash to wreck it. Flash, enraged after being read, raised his fist and delivered a punch to Naruto's jaw. Naruto caught the bully's fist with his hand without even flinching. "No way, Eugene. I told you this whole thing we're having here is over." Hearing this enraged Flash even more, prompting him to strike out with his other hand. Naruto easily grabbed the fist once more. "You're making both of us look bad, Flash. Look at how many people are staring at us. Please pause before you injure yourself. Hurting me, even if you can no longer, will not change the reality that you are unhappy with yourself. This isn't going to make people like you, Eugene." These words just served to aggravate Flash. The blonde oaf jerked his head back and rammed it into Naruto, headbutting him with all his might. Naruto's skin was unmarked, but Flash's forehead began to flow as he sank to his knees. Naruto spoke before Flash could even consider misusing his privilege and threatening to eject Naruto. "Before you try to lie and say I beat you up, look around." When Flash and Naruto turned around, They noticed that practically every student in the hallway had videotaped what had happened. Normally, they'd walk past Naruto being bullied as if it were nothing, but this time they wanted to film the fight. You see? Naruto motioned at the throng of onlookers near them. There's no point in lying about it. Flash, leave me alone. Simply give up. Flash remained silent as the Parker boy went away, Cindy mooned close after. Cindy was impressed, admiring Naruto as he finally stood up for himself in the coolest way conceivable in her opinion. Wow, Naruto. That was pretty awesome. You were like Giorno after beating up the bad man, when his piano music would play. Cindy complimented Naruto with her customary pop culture references, making him smile slightly. He did feel cool, but he only had the confidence to say what he did because of his abilities. The rest of the school day proceeded as usual, if not better than usual. Flash no longer even looked at Naruto, and the students looked at him with admiration, a far cry from their normal glares. Naruto was buried in his own thoughts as he sat alone in Dr. Connor's after-school program. This happened frequently as he began to worry about his mother's killer, who was involved, and the Project V secrets. Can you identify the man in the suit? Where has Herman gone? What in the world is Project U? Hello there, Naruto. To attract Naruto's attention, Harry waved his hand in front of his friend's face. Are you going to ignore me in real life too? Naruto pulled out of it, staring at Harry's carefree face before responding. Oh, no, I was just daydreaming. I'm sorry about that as well. I'm referring to the ignoring. I'm sorry, but I couldn't force myself to speak with anyone. As he reflected on his own history, Harry's cheerful smile faded into a sorrowful one. Don't be concerned, man. When my mother died, I was the same way. Harry paused, still not totally recovered from his mother's death nearly 4 years before. Investigators deemed it a suicide, however he never believed that account. Dr. Connors began the day's lesson before Harry could finish speaking. They talked about energy discharge, offering Naruto some ideas for how he could use his abilities. Dr. Connors made an announcement to the class at the end of the program. Before I let you go, we'll have a little competition. I'll email you the rules, but we'll be holding a drone Olympics in which you'll all compete with your own handmade drones. You will collaborate with a partner, and the award will be a full scholarship to Empire State University, including housing. Naruto, like the students, became enthused. He couldn't afford to pay for his tuition or his apartment on his own. This would be quite beneficial. Hey, wanna be partners? Harry spoke to Naruto in hushed tones. Regardless of how Harry led on, he wasn't an idiot, and Naruto was perfectly content to be companions with him. Yeah, bet. Naruto replied, allowing Harry to pump his fist in triumph. Again, Harry wasn't an idiot, but he wasn't a genius either, so he couldn't create anything advanced on his own. However, the combination of Osborne technology and Parker brains was a match made in heaven. The event ended, and both boys said their goodbyes as they exited the classroom. You better not disappear on me again. Harry made a joke. I won't. I swear. Naruto responded with his hands in his pockets and a bashful stare to the ground. He raised his eyes to Harry and smiled half-heartedly. See ya, Harry. Naruto walked away from school with an uneasy feeling in his stomach. Normally, he'd feel weary and exhausted, but he weirdly hoped the day was longer so he could catch up with his buddies. He didn't understand it until that day, but he missed them terribly. He didn't want to be alone. Loneliness was excruciating. However, being alone hurts considerably more than grieving. He was afraid that as they came closer, the intensity of sadness would engulf him once more. While sitting alone in his apartment bedroom, Naruto reflected about his actions as the Phantom Spider. He'd read a news item about how crime rates had risen following Fisk's death, only to plummet after Fisk's men were hunted down and attacked by the so-called Phantom. He was praised online for cleaning up the streets, even though that was never his focus. Surprisingly, that compliment felt nice to him. It was inadvertent, yet he was building an audience, even bigger than when he was merely a streamer. This fame sparked an idea in him. I need a symbol. The boy thought to himself. Yeah, a symbol that people will fear when they see it. He strolled over to his workstation and began doodling various forms of a spider symbol. He opted to use one of his concepts, which resembled a spider with long, pointy legs, after a few sketches. Naruto noticed his costume on the ground out of the corner of his eye, which gave him an idea. I could sew the emblem onto my chest, but I'd need a sewing machine. Cindy is a seamstress, perhaps she has an extra one lying around. Naruto took out his phone and began texting Cindy. Hey, can I ask you a favor? Naruto, who is this? Cindy. Naruto's heart sank as he saw this. What? Did I irritate her so much that she removed my phone number? His concerns, though, would be alleviated by her follow-up. Cindy. Laughter. What's going on? Smiley face. Naruto let out a relieved sigh before starting their text discussion. Naruto. You had me for a second there, NGL lol. Do you chance to have an additional sewing machine laying around? Naruto asks. I need to repair a shirt. Cindy. You want to come by, RN? Naruto's heart pumped faster. A girl recently asked me to her residence. Cindy simply asked me to her home. He responded to her message before his mind wandered. Yeah, that sounds good, I'll swing by now. What's your address, Naruto? Naruto instantly turned off his phone and jumped in the shower, making sure to properly clean every inch of his body. He dried himself off and started putting on his clothes in his room while thinking to himself. Okay, there's no cause to be concerned. Besides, she'll most likely simply hand it to me through her front door. He was about to conclude his idea when he received a notification from Cindy Moon herself. Cindy. Please do not enter by the front door. My room is on the fire escape on the 5th story, so climb up and I'll unlock the window. Smiley face. Naruto's inner monologue abruptly changed. Okay, it's only a girl's room. Still, nothing to worry about. It's not like anything will happen, is it? Naruto mused to himself as his thoughts drifted. Naruto finished getting dressed before swinging over to Cindy's flat before his mind could go too far. He hid his web shooters in his rucksack, which also housed his suit in case of emergency, before climbing the fire escape. When Naruto knocked on her window, she opened it almost instantly, as if she was expecting him. Her hair was freshly brushed, and she wore makeup, which wouldn't make sense for someone who was just lazing at home. She, like Naruto, prepared herself for his visit. Hey. Naruto's attempt to be normal had already failed. He was nervous, as any boy who had never been in a girl's room before would be. Cindy began interrogating him with a puzzled expression. How did you get here so quickly? She inquired, her brow furrowed. What do you mean? Naruto responded simply, trying not to appear suspicious. I texted you my address about 20 minutes ago. Did you fly here or what? Cindy laughed into her hand, unintentionally hitting the nail on the head. It only took Naruto approximately 10 minutes to swing there. If he had walked or even sprinted, it would have taken considerably longer. Flying? No, but I wish. I just dashed here because it was freezing. You know, because when you exercise, chemical energy is converted into heat, and your heart rate increases, which increases blood flow, which raises body heat. Naruto spoke quietly, hesitating towards the conclusion after realizing he'd gone on an anxious over-explanation by accident. Cindy, on the other hand, didn't mind as she smiled up at him, both hands beneath her chin. She truly liked it when he described things in such a way that she thought it was one of his cute characteristics. Yeah. Cindy laughed before taking a step back and motioning for the boy to enter. Well, come in, it's cold. Naruto climbed into her room and uncomfortably stood close to the window after closing it. Cindy walked over to her desk and unplugged her sewing machine. She turned around to see Naruto standing in the same location, which made her laugh. They'd been pals for years, but Naruto was always awkward. It was part of his personality. You're not required to stand, Naruto. Please take a seat right there. Cindy directed him to her white bed, which was piled high with plush animals. Naruto sat on her bed and took a glance around her room. It appeared to be quite simple and ordinary. It was spotless, as if it had just been cleaned prior to his arrival. Her ice skates were the only thing on the floor, which made sense given that she was a figure skater. She hung star-shaped string lights from the ceiling to illuminate the space. So this is what a girl's room looks like. Cindy approached him with the sewing machine and placed it next to him as he concluded his idea. Here you go. She chuckled as she laid it on a bed. She then took a seat on the opposite side of Naruto and immediately saw his now strong arms. Did you begin working out? I swear you were much slimmer not long ago. She reached out and grasped his bicep, squeezing his new muscles that were nothing like his regular noddle limbs. Naruto could feel his heart rate accelerate. He gazed out the window to cover his astonished and frightened appearance. How did you achieve so much in such a short period of time? Did you enter the hyperbolic time chamber? As she squeezed his arm farther, she giggled at her own joke. I've been working out daily for months actually. As he spoke, Naruto massaged the back of his head, his primary way of expressing uneasiness. It is January, so maybe you didn't notice under my winter clothes. She squinted her eyes at his solemn demeanor as she peered up at him suspiciously. I guess that's true. Before she could grab anything else, she heard footfall near Cindy's door, which became louder before coming to a complete halt. "Cindy, who are you talking to in there?" From behind the door, a middle school boy said, "Is it that guy Naruto you keep talking about?" Cindy's face gradually changed hues, turning a brilliant pink from embarrassment. Naruto raised an eyebrow, not quite sure what her brother was getting at. He may have been the smartest boy at Osborne Academy, but if there was a scale for emotional intelligence, he would be in the single digits. No, Albert, leave, Cindy yelled, her face growing brighter by the second. Cindy took Naruto's hand and dragged him over to the window before he could say anything. "You gotta go now." She spoke cautiously, but her countenance quickly changed to a dazzling smile, like if she were an Oscar-winning actor. "I'll text you later, 'kay?" "Of course, I'll text you when I get back. Goodbye, Cindy." Naruto went out of her window and down the fire escape, holding the sewing machine in one hand. Cindy stood there watching as the boy picked up his knapsack off the floor and walked away with the machine. She wondered what was in the bag and why he had left it, but she quickly rejected such ideas and shut the window. Naruto began swinging one-handed through the city after she was far enough away from her apartment and out of her line of sight. As he swung, he reflected on Cindy and what her brother had said. Does she truly mention me? I'm curious what she says. Naruto eventually found himself in his room, working on the insignia for his costume. He'd gotten it after some trial and error. He held up his turtleneck, which he wore beneath his trenchcoat when combating criminals, and revealed the front white spider logo. He picked white so that people would be aware that the Phantom Spider was approaching, comparable to another hero who wore all white for the same purpose. I suppose I'll go on some patrols tonight. As he began putting on his outfit piece by piece, the spider told himself. The vigilante leapt from his window and began his patrol through the city, looking for anyone who might have been associated with Fisk. He came upon a group of thugs attempting to break into a penthouse not long after starting his hunt. The Phantom Spider landed in the darkness behind the three criminals as they stood near a door with tools in an attempt to open it. After hearing his feet strike the floor behind them, the three men turned around. They could only make out the outline of a humanoid figure, but the white emblem on his chest revealed who he was. Shit. Spider-Man has arrived. We're going to die. One of the goons knelt down like a coward, but the other two remained firm. Despite their fear, they refused to go down like puppies. What do you want? One of the thugs yelled at the person, causing the Phantom to emerge from the shadows. Who here works for Fisk? He asked the group, forcing both standing guards to gaze down at the cowardly one involuntarily. So it's just the one, isn't it? Before webbing and clothes lining the standing goons, the Phantom Spider thought to himself. They both passed out instantly, leaving only the cowardly one to shiver in front of the door. I have a daughter, please. Don't murder me. As the vigilante approached him gently, the man remarked. The crime fighter in a trenchcoat knelt in front of the man and examined his eyes via his goggles. I'm not. Unless you force me to. You used to work for Fisk. Tell me about Project V, Herman Schultz, or that gray-skinned person. The father trembled even more as the spider spoke to him, perplexed as to why the kid needed that information. What? Why? The coward inquired, dismissing the ghost because he had pledged not to murder him. Knowing this, the boy increased the stakes. The child grabbed the man by the collar and tossed him off the building before webbing him in the chest. He then dangled the man from the building's ledge before questioning him. It doesn't matter why. I'll drop you if you don't tell me what you know. He had no intention of killing the man because he appeared to be nothing more than a petty thief and a father, but he needed to persuade himself. I'm not sure about the V stuff, but Herman now works for Magia. That's all I've got. The man shouted as he dangled hundreds of feet off the structure. Magia? Yes, of course. The vigilante reflected to himself. Do you know where? Thunder and lightning could be heard and seen in the distance before the child could finish his sentence, but the sky was clear. Soon after, police cars and helicopters began to pass by the youngster, leading him to believe that something major was going on. Though barely visible to the Phantom Spider, a bald man with pale complexion was spotted soaring in the air using electricity similar to Naruto's. As he flew higher, the metallic vest he wore over his green jacket began to sparkle on his chest. When the man was close enough to two police helicopters, he hurled two bolts of lightning at them, causing both to explode on impact, killing the pilots and passengers instantaneously. Naruto's pupils dilated as the bright explosion reflected off his goggles. He reminded himself several times that he was only doing what he was doing to find his mother's killer. He had no interest in assisting cops or utilizing his skills to save people, but this stirred something in him. The child acted as though a voice in his head had instructed him to do so. The child hauled his questioning victim up to the roof in an instant before swinging toward the electric man. When the phantom spider was close enough, he charged his leg with electricity before slingshotting himself toward the electric guy. He kicked the man in the face with his leg outstretched, sending him flying backward into a billboard. The phantom spider talked after landing on the same building as the poster. "What the hell is your problem?" So started the phantom spider's first battle against a super-powered foe. He wasn't terrified, even though his heart was racing. Despite his desire not to be a hero within him had emerged. A massive bolt of electricity flashed into the night sky before the electric guy, using his electrokinesis, burst through the billboard once more and began hovering above the hero, who was now standing on the same roof with his hands in fists. The electric man lifted an eyebrow before confidently speaking to the youngster beneath him. "So you got electricity in you too, huh?" The man then flourished his arms, brightening himself with seemingly unlimited energy. "Unfortunately, yours is weak. That kick hardly tickled. Keep an eye on this." The man thrust his hand forward, releasing a bolt of lightning at breakneck speed. Though the phantom spider had enhanced senses, he wasn't prepared for such speed because he'd never seen anything like it. The bolt struck the boy in the chest, sending him flying backward and collapsing into a water tower behind him. The electric man mocked the now drenched spider as water flowed all over him. "Ah, look at the itsy bitsy spider." He burst out laughing. "And that was only about 10% of my power. Run along, boy. This has got nothing to do with you." Unwilling to give up, the phantom spider rose to his feet as his body and the electric water around him interacted. "Who the hell are you?" the new hero murmured angrily, still in pain from the bald man's previous onslaught. The man put his hand on his chest, almost as if he was irritated that his name wasn't known. "Me? Don't forget that I'm the one and only Electro, the new god of this world." The man responded in a high and mighty tone that matched his god mentality well. "Once I find where they're hiding the good stuff, I'll be able to rid myself of this mortal body and truly take the form of a god." Naruto began to laugh. Not because anything Electro said was humorous to him, or at least not totally, but because the entire situation was ludicrous. What kind of dummy name is that? He reflected to himself. With his palm still on his abdomen, the young hero made his first formal remark as a hero. Electro? Wasn't the shocker already taken? The boy laughed a little, but Electro didn't like it. Naruto would rarely crack a joke or chuckle in such a serious situation, but he was nervous. He'd often say the first thing that came to mind or something dumb to calm himself down when he was nervous. It worked that time, but Electro was irritated. Electro's face screwed up quickly, and his body began to glow brighter than it had ever before. Someone has delicate skin. As Electro charged up and levitated higher, Naruto thought to himself. "You think I'm some kind of joke, kid?" As he spoke with malevolence, Electro's confident tone changed to a more sinister one. "I'll give you something to laugh at." He climbed higher in the air, his eyes gleaming white. He then threw an electric bolt towards Naruto, but this time he was prepared. The hero evaded it at the last second and fired a web at Electro. Electro avoided the web and fired another bolt at the inexperienced hero. Electro fired bolts of electricity at the spider one after the other, each one missing him by millimeters. Naruto attempted to land a web on Electro at the same time, but they all failed. Electro realized he was out of energy after launching a few dozen lightning bolts. He soared toward an electric billboard with the word ROXXON written on it before draining the power from it with both hands. His body began to light brilliantly again, indicating that he was on the verge of becoming pure energy. Oh, so he needs to recharge. Before stupidly rushing at the man while he believed he was distracted, the spider thought to himself. "You bozo, you think I can't attack while I juice up?" Electro used his other hand to fire a tremendous bolt of lightning at the hero, sending him flying toward the futuristic-looking Roxen skyscraper. The force of his fall sent him through an exterior wall and then through numerous stories of the structure into a vast storage chamber of Nuform, a type of renewable energy produced by the Roxen firm but still in the experimental stages. The phantom spider was lying on his back, humbled and with a piece of metal piercing his chest, looking up at the electric evil as he descended to him. "I gave you a second opportunity, youngster. I'm not going to let you stand in my way of getting pure." Electro smiled as he used some of the new form surrounding him to charge an unbelievable quantity of energy in his body. As he gathered more and more to charge his strike, the veins in his body began to glow. He became enthralled by the energy and burst out laughing before speaking to his next victim. "Since you're kinda like me, I'll add a little more juice with this one." His body eventually reached its limit and he released everything upon the boy's body. "Ah!" Naruto yelled in agony as every inch of his skin felt as if it were about to peel off. His costume, despite being newly modified with his emblem, was not designed to handle this much force and began to tear apart. Naruto's speech began to cut in and out like a faulty computer. As the boy glitched, a blazing blue light began to form from his mouth, as did the veins in his skin. What the hell? Electro was perplexed by the strange display in front of him. His attack had caused the entire Nuform-filled area to react with the Phantom Spider's body, driving an unfathomable quantity of energy into his body. Why the hell aren't you burnt to a crisp right now? Naruto's body vibrated faster and faster with each passing second. His arms and torso began to flash brilliantly, briefly changing to a neon blue color. The ground beneath Naruto, as well as the machinery in the room, began to light. Electro's body shivers as he senses an outpouring of electricity all around him. The youngster is going to blow up. He was terrified as the boy beneath him continued to spasm. He tried to become pure energy, but it was too much for him to manage mentally. He was paralyzed by fear of the unknown. Electro soared away to a safe distance before turning around and looking at the Roxen building, as if his body had a mind of its own. The entire Roxen building erupted, devastating surrounding buildings and seemingly killing hundreds of inhabitants and scientists who were either near or within the structure. The explosion was so huge that it could be seen throughout New York as a dazzling blue beam shone seemingly forever toward the heavens. When the explosion was over, all that remained of the Roxen building was a large hole. Christ! When Electro saw the devastation he had accidentally wrought, he mumbled to himself. He didn't care about the lives lost, he was just taken aback by the magnitude of the event. After a few seconds of staring at the debris, he turned around to discover that the park underneath him was totally filled with people and scientists. There were hundreds of them, all standing in a large group, gazing around and feeling as if they didn't know where they were. The hell? Electro thought to himself, oblivious to the incredible feat that had occurred in a matter of seconds. A few seconds before, as blue electricity burst from his body, the Phantom Spider's body exploded, shredding his outfit to shreds. Despite the fact that he had been unconscious for hours, the child leaned up to see that he was still in the middle of the explosion when it went off. Everything around him had almost come to a halt, as if he had frozen time itself. He looked down at his body and noticed that he was now encircled by a blue electric aura. He had failed to notice that his irises had turned a vivid, neon blue, and his hair had turned white as snow. He looked to his left and saw a scientist trapped in time, about to be hit by a piece of the explosion's debris that had frozen in front of her. Without a second thought, the hero dashed over to the woman, seizing her by the waist and dragging her out of the building, carrying her to a nearby park. From the park, he could see the dazzling blue beam that shone up to the heavens as if he hadn't generated it milliseconds before. Despite this, the child ran back inside the frozen, bursting building, searching it from top to bottom for anyone who could be within. The youngster brought each and every last scientist out of the building one by one, sometimes two at a time, until there were none left within. Though it felt like minutes had gone for him, it had only been seconds. The boy observed that several of the adjacent structures were in risk of the possible explosive radius after double-checking the facility. Still, the Phantom Spider sped through the many apartment buildings, restaurants, and stores that encircled the Roxen site, taking each and every inhabitant to the same park until everyone was safe. He even had enough time to triple-check. The energy coursing through him, however powerful, was not yet Naruto's to possess. His body was being overwhelmed by it, and he needed to let it go quickly or else his body would explode, potentially nuking the entire area. He did what his brain instructed him to do because he didn't know what else to do.
He ran. Back in real time, the building burst, destroying all of the neighboring structures. The Phantom Spider had spared the park's residents and scientists, who all stared around with varying emotions of awe. They had no idea how they got out there. All they knew was that they had been in one spot a moment before, and that they were now safe from the explosion that they could see in front of them. The Phantom Spider, who was now visible throughout the city, began to slow down as the new blue energy began to leave his body. He eventually slowed to the point that he was little more than a child, dressed shabbily and running barefoot through the streets of New York.
He eventually overexerted himself, yet the energy within him that could have erupted had been successfully evacuated. The boy passed out in a random alleyway, away from everyone else, knowing he was about to fall, and fell unconscious. Parker. As pictures rushed through his head, a deep, demonic, and gravelly voice called to the young man. He was dreaming of something, yet he was completely conscious of it, as if he were watching a movie. Parker. That same malignant voice whispered to the youngster as images of a ruined New York, among other things, flashed through Naruto's mind like film. Naruto. Cindy's voice summoned him. Please do not. You said you would. What? What do you mean? Naruto's inner voice inquired as random pictures flew through, too fast for him to process. Naruto, I'm sorry. Harry's voice was serious. This is how it has to be, we knew it would come to this. How must it be? Naruto yelled, unable to make sense of anything he was seeing or hearing. It's all your fault. A voice that sounded similar to his but was significantly older chastised him. It's entirely your fault. You're worthless. You're a wimp. Is that you? Before the dream showed him one final sight, Naruto thought to himself. Naruto was spotted standing in the middle of a wrecked New York, surrounded by hundreds of dead victims. Something was wrong with his appearance, but he couldn't determine what until the vision moved closer to his body. He saw himself for a split second, though he was unrecognizable. He was older, perhaps by 2 or 3 years, and his hair was the darkest black he'd ever seen. He had an aura surrounding his body, but unlike the one that had previously wrapped him, this one was white with a deep black outline around it that matched his hair. His expression seemed unnatural, as if he were nothing more than a machine. His future self looked up at him with a freakishly quick head turn before his body was shrouded in darkness. Ha! Naruto awoke, out of breath, to find himself on a sofa inside an unknown penthouse. It appeared to be expensive, as there were numerous grandiloquent vases and cat figurines spread over the room. His wound from the piece of metal that had stabbed him had been cleaned and patched together, but most of his garments were missing. The boy sat up and looked around the room till he discovered a woman in an all-black, skin-tight costume that showed off her exquisite body shape. Her hair was silver, and she wore a black face mask. She sipped from a glass of milk in her hand as she sat on a chair with her legs crossed, lustfully glancing over at the young man. She addressed the hero in the seductress's voice. Good morning, Spider. Naruto, who was still resting on a couch inside the mysterious apartment and was barely dressed, gazed over at the woman in astonishment. She was one of the most stunning women he'd ever seen, and her figure was fit for a deity. She sat in her chair, her black spandex-covered legs crossed, staring at the youngster over her mask as if he were a 5-star meal. Am I gone? The hero urgently thought to himself. Did my body blow up and send me to heaven? The young hero looked down at his body and saw that the woman had bandaged his wounds. Naruto went for his face urgently, felt his face for his black mask, realizing he was nearly fully naked. When he realized the mask was still on, he breathed a sigh of relief because his hair and part of his eye were visible. When she saw him reach for his face, she laughed sensually before taunting the young man with her remarks. Don't worry, my little spider, I didn't look. I enjoy the mystery. The woman's seductive voice sent shivers down Naruto's spine, giving him a sensation he'd never felt from something as basic as a woman's voice. My little spider? He asked her quietly. Though it was strange, he enjoyed her calling him that. Well, you had that spider, or what was left of it, on your outfit, so I think it's a fitting nickname for you. When you were chatting in your sleep, you also sounded young. Are you a student? She asked him, resting her palm on her chin and looked at him intently. Yeah, it's my first year. Naruto lied to her. A college boy, huh? She rubbed her chin seductively as she talked before rising to her feet and carefully approached the youngster like a runway model. Naruto could feel his heart beating as she approached him. With each step, her hips swayed side to side. As if in a trance, Naruto's gaze was fixed on her legs, thighs, and hips. I'm either dead or dreaming, he says. He was thinking to himself as he watched her hips and thighs sway side to side till she was directly in front of him. Using his firm muscles as a guide, she slid her gloved, clawed finger over his upper chest and the remainder of his upper torso. Naruto's spine shook again with excitement, as this was the first time a woman had touched him in this way. The woman proceeded to delicately touch his chest with her claw while talking in his ear, bending down on her knees. I don't mind if you don't. Do you mind the age gap? She erotically spoke into his ear. He shook his head rapidly, not losing eye contact with her, and he didn't mind. She looked into his eyes through their masks, her face level with his. Naruto could sense her animalistic energy around her as her eyes stared at him as if she was ready to devour him whole. Do you have a girlfriend? She inquired, breaking Naruto's spell because his mind could only think about Cindy. Well, he began to murmur his response, but was abruptly interrupted by her finger pressing against his lips. Shush. Actually, don't respond. Are you still unmarried? How about we play a little role-playing? She slipped her hand down from his neck all the way down his torso, nearing the soul-clothed portion of his body. I'll be the instructor. You'll be one of my students. As her hand moved further down his body, eventually touching on his inner thigh, she declared sensually. Naruto leaned upward in an instant, before her hand could reach its destination. Despite the fact that the woman was quite attractive to him, he couldn't help but think about Cindy at the moment. Despite the fact that they were not a couple, it felt like he was betraying her. He cleared his throat and attempted to leave the feline's den in an indirect manner. Wouldn't you prefer someone a little more experienced? She forcibly pushed him back on the couch before he could complete his sentence. She crawled on top of the young hero and pinned his arms down, not wanting him to move. The phantom spider could obviously dominate her, yet he found himself getting back into it. As she pinned him down, she gradually leaned down until their mouths were barely inches apart. I didn't dismiss you yet. Her animal eyes pierced his soul as she talked authoritatively, yet seductively, to him. Holy crap. Naruto's inner voice mumbled in astonishment, yet he recognized something was wrong. Naruto grabbed her by the waist, giving her the impression that he was interested in her advances. He hauled her up in the air with his superhuman strength, forcing her to let out a playful squeal as he easily overpowered her. She wrapped her arms and legs securely around him as he leaned up with her in his hands. The young man then stood up, still holding her close, before gently lowering her. The masked kid, now towering over her due to his above-average height, stared down at her with serious eyes, converting her animalistic glare to one of submission. I have to leave. I'm not sure how I feel about this right now. Naruto stated the obvious. Again, he felt that anything he did with that woman would be tantamount to betraying Cindy. The woman grinned slightly as she placed her hand on his chest. She was disappointed, but she understood what he was saying. I understand, perhaps next time. Naruto nodded and looked down at her palm, observing the wound she had repaired just below his heart. He didn't understand it at the time, but the piece of metal that stabbed him was only inches away from becoming lethal. Oh, thank you so much for assisting me with my wounds. Hole. What should I call you? The woman laughed, understanding that the two of them could have done what she wanted, despite the fact that they didn't even know each other's names. This is Felicia. Or, if you like, Black Cat. You don't have to tell me yours. As I already stated, I prefer the mystery. When he heard her name, Naruto grinned slightly behind his mask. Thank you very much, Felicia. I should leave right now. Would you like to borrow some clothes? They won't fit you, but it's preferable to swinging around with your bulge exposed. She chuckled a little at her own remarks. I'll be back. Naruto gazed down at his wrists and around the room as the woman moved away into another room of her apartment. His web shooters were nowhere to be found. After giving them some thought, he realized he didn't utilize them at all when he saved those individuals, therefore the cheap prototypes he built must have exploded. He then entered the room she had entered and noticed a wall covered in newspapers concerning the magia. Is she aware of the magia? Is she on the lookout for them? He reflected to himself. When he saw this, he knew he had to return to her, but preventing Electro from causing further harm took precedence over his revenge plot. Revenge could be postponed. Black Cat soon returned from the room, carrying an oversized t-shirt and sweatpants, which she handed to the hero. Here, you go. Thanks. Naruto hurriedly pulled on the t-shirt that fit and the sweatpants that were far too short for him. Black Cat teased him one more as he completed putting on his temporary clothing. Don't neglect me, my little spider. You'll need to get those back. She offered him a sneaky smile while flirtatiously speaking. Certainly, ma'am. I vow to return. He responded by nodding. I guess this is goodbye, for now, Felicia. Goodbye, Spider. The hero turned around and left her penthouse while still wearing his mask. Despite his lack of webs, the child was able to free run across New York's roofs, stopping at a store that sold electricity-resistant fabric before returning home. On his way there, he attempted to recreate what had happened earlier by utilizing his electricity to run at super speed, but it appeared that the electricity within him had returned to normal, losing its blue tint and returning to yellow.
He thought about the woman as he ran, about how she was coming on to him so forcefully. He'd never seen anything like that. To him, it was the first time a lady had exhibited any genuine interest in him, albeit that was not the case, he was simply deaf. He debated turning around and letting the woman have her way with him, but those thoughts were quickly drowned out by Cindy Moon's. In his mind, Black Cat would be the easy way out, but he wondered if it was actually what he wanted.
When he returned home, the hero spent hours making an exact reproduction of his previous suit, right down to the emblem, out of the electricity resistance cloth he had just purchased. He not only designed a new costume, but also a new version of his web shooters. He had already planned the new design, but sloth kept him from really creating it. This time, the web shooters were small and resembled conventional wristbands, allowing him to wear them surreptitiously in public. He had to carry little cartridges to refill them due to their size, but that was far preferable to hauling around the old huge ones. A news report aired in the background as he worked on the finishing touches for his new web shooters, hailing the Phantom Spider for a job well done. In what can only be described as a miracle, 213 people were saved last night. After a man described as being composed of lightning caused the Roxxon plant to explode, civilians claimed they were whisked out of danger by an unknown hero. Everyone is wondering if, in the aftermath of the Avengers' disappearance, a new hero has emerged to protect the city in their absence. Many believe it was the Phantom Spider, the streamer turned vigilante who is also the prime suspect in Wilson Fisk's murder, as he was seen fighting the Electric Man moments before the explosion. We thank you, whether you are the Phantom Spider or someone else. We thank all 213 people, including parents, spouses, and children. The authorities have. Naruto grinned as the woman on the program congratulated him for his acts. For the first time in his life, he felt validated. Many media sites would argue that the Phantom Spider was doing more harm than good by executing Fisk, which had a tremendous repercussion in the criminal world. He felt better knowing that there were individuals out there who could relate to him. However, those happy feelings quickly faded when the broadcast was interrupted by a breaking news report. Breaking news. The man who attacked the Roxxon facility is now in Times Square. Oh my God, he exclaimed. The newscaster abruptly came to a halt and glanced up at the sky, startled. A bolt of electricity struck the man seconds later, reducing him to nothing more than a burnt husk. The cameraman was also hit, causing the camera to tumble to the ground and show the electric guy flying through the air and shooting electric bolts at the fleeing populace. For a brief period, the Phantom Spider, the young hero, stared at the television in despair as he observed the innocent people's lives being lost in front of him. After snapping out of his stupor, the hero donned his new and improved suit, as well as his web shooters, and jumped out of his window to confront Electro once more. He had no real plan, no clear strategy, but he knew he had to do something. It was entirely his fault. Though he didn't notice it, the electricity around his limbs, which had started discharging due to his rage, began flickering blue, just like it did when his body connected with the new form. Unbeknownst to the youngster, he was about to discover a new power. Godspeed. To be continued.
That's it for this podcast. Thanks for listening to this video. I hope it did interest you with the story, and if it did, like, share, and subscribe for more. And thank you all for help and support, and have a great day.